Hello, and welcome to Nursing News You Can Use live at 5 at T. I'm Tina Baxter, your host, and apologize for running a little bit behind, but I had a great conversation with a gentleman out of Noblesville. It was wonderful just to hear what he's up to, and so it ran me a little behind today, but I just wanted to say shout out to Mark, and thanks for the great conversation. So let's get started. Our affirmation for today. Today is February the 5th, 2025. And our affirmation is desperation repels, gratitude attracts. I'm going to say this again. Desperation repels and gratitude attracts. This is from You Are a Badass from the Badass Calendar by Jan Sincero. And I wanted to say I had that moment last week where I was feeling a little bit desperate, discouraged. And yet today and this week, I've started to embrace gratitude for myself. And so when I saw that as our affirmation, I was like, this is just so true and so real. All right, let me just change this a little bit. I wanted to, give me a chance to get back in the frame there. So we've had a very busy week, and it looks like you've probably had a busy start to your week too. So let's go ahead and get into the news because we do have some announcements. And the first is our event that's coming up this Saturday. So if you haven't had a chance to register for the event, I'm going to encourage you to do that. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But you can register right here on our Facebook page. Go to the Nurse Shark Academy Facebook page. You can register there. You can also register through Eventbrite or on our website, thenurseSharkAcademy.biz. For our event that's coming up, but let me go ahead and get into the news and we'll talk about that a little bit more in just a moment. All right, here is our first story for today. A jolt inside the operational disruption at nursing homes from CMS communication freeze from Skilled Nursing News. The Trump administration's communications freeze, which has indefinitely blocked the majority of external communications by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, continues to cause turmoil for nursing home operators. This freeze imposed last week has disrupted the flow of key healthcare data and extends to several federal agencies, including the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC. At nursing homes, it's causing problems for some facilities by delaying updates to their star ratings and other public health measures that rely on CMS data. Some operators have expressed concerns about how the freeze has complicated their ability to monitor facility performance and manage their public image, and worry it could soon have an impact on their operations and financial performance. The gag order effects were felt as early as January the 29th, when, along with the quarterly refresh, nursing homes were expecting an unfreezing of 4 quality measures that were on hold since April of 2024 in order to allow for measure adjustments for minimum data set changes, or MDS changes. Lack of clarity on this much anticipated move has added to administrative burdens and overall uncertainty already, operators have said. So this is a very complicated process. There's a lot of agencies that are affected and things that trickle down to affect individual lives, not just the people who are working for these administrations, but it now affects nursing homes and healthcare and things like that, which is why I'm bringing these stories to you. And so it may seem simplistic when you are dealing with, let's say, a manufacturing company and you decided to put a stop on what you're doing in your company, and maybe that affects other people because they're not getting the parts that they need for their cars or whatever they're building. But you can see this is a lot bigger when you're talking about stopping information from an entire government. And these things are driving where payments are, how people get access to services. So there's a lot of information out there that's critical for the day-to-day operations that we're not able to get. So this is why I'm bringing these comments to you. And so if you're having trouble, I'm going to encourage you to contact your legislator and complain. Tell them how this is affecting you, because until they get enough people lighting up their the switchboard and sending them emails and all this stuff, they're really not going to do much about it. And it says, while there are currently no operational disruptions, the longer the halt persists, the greater its effects will be down the road. In the grand scheme of things, combined with the chaotic rollout of last week's executive orders freezing new regulations, which included a temporary shutdown of the Medicaid portal and potential cuts to Medicaid being pushed by Republican lawmakers, the overall impact of the communications freeze is jarring, experts said. It's absolutely a jolt to the industry. Fred Bentley, managing director for the post-acute and long-term care and senior living practices at ATI Advisory, told SNN. Every day that goes by without that communication, there's just more ambiguity and uncertainty. Organizations worry that they may need to put a pause on any financial investment or other operational decisions, he said. It's chaotic, especially for the nursing home sector, where many organizations are running on fairly thin margins. It really does start to raise questions about, do we invest here? Do we need to hire here? Do we put this program in place? Do we still need to be reporting the data? And while operators in the sector haven't reported financial fallout in the immediate term, star ratings can impact the facility's bottom line too over time, because if you have a low star rating, many people won't want to put their loved ones there. So there's a lot more to this story. I'm encouraging you to go ahead and take a look at this at Skilled Nursing News. They did a great article on this. Let's see what happens. I'm going to leave that one alone. All right. So in other news, this is from Ignite's Long-Term Care News. It says couple pleads guilty to $1.2 billion wound care fraud that targeted nursing home patients. Let's talk about it and how you, as a nurse and a nurse practitioner, can protect yourself from getting caught up in some of these things, because this is why I'm bringing this story. An Arizona couple has pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud and wire fraud for a $1.2 billion scheme that targeted seniors in skilled nursing facilities and other healthcare settings, persuading them to receive expensive and unnecessary wound care. The medically untrained, I'm going to say that again, the medically untrained pair contracted faulty sales representatives to, quote, locate elderly patients, including hospice patients, who had wounds at any stage and order amniotic wound grafts from a specific graft distributor. The Department of Justice said that Alexandra Girk, 39, and husband Jeffrey King, 46, own Apex Mobile Medical LLC, Apex Medical LLC, Viking Medical Consultants LLC, and APX Mobile Medical LLC. The grafts were purchased in sizes 4 by 6 inches or larger, regardless of the patient's wound size, to ensure maximum federal reimbursement, the DOJ reported in a statement Friday. Kickbacks totaling $279 million were paid to sales representatives based on the size and quantity of the grafts sold. Garricky and King then paid nurse practitioners a flat rate of $500 to $1,000 to apply the grafts to wounds, pressuring them to implant them against their, quote, medical judgment. This is where I'm bringing this up, okay? If it is not medically necessary, you cannot order that treatment. And if you have a patient that is not doing well and is on hospice care, why would you order these very expensive treatments when the outcome is not good? And again, these are non-medical people pressuring medical people to do this. So this is why I bring this up, because this is how you fall into those traps of non-medical people trying to tell you how to dictate your practice. And then there's that whole, pay to play type stuff. Okay. So in fact, some of the grafts were applied to on the day of or within days of a patient's death. Over the course of 16 months, November 2022 to May of 2024, the ploy resulted in fraudulent billing to federal programs, including Medicare, TRICARE, and CHAMP VA, totaling more than $960 million. When Gerke and King's arrests were announced in June, the government seized luxury vehicles, gold, and bank accounts worth more than $70 million, and also rounded up several co-conspirators. Carlos Ching, 55 of Phoenix, was charged with conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud after he was paid by APX to apply allografts to Medicare patients that were procured through kickbacks and bribes. Between June of 2023 and January 2024, APX fraudulently billed Medicare for more than $87 million for allografts applied by Ching. Bethany Jamison, 53 of Gilbert, Arizona, was also charged with conspiracy to commit wire fraud between November 2022 and August of 2023. Apex Mobile Medical and Apex billed Medicare more than $71 million for allografts that she applied for. Gerke pleaded guilty in October 2024 and will be sentenced on February 11th. King pleaded guilty Friday and has yet to receive a sentencing date. Gerke has agreed to pay a restitution amount of $614,990,420, and King has agreed to pay $605,690,110. This is where I'm saying that you get caught up in these things, you can then potentially be considered a co-conspirator because you're taking money. You cannot accept kickbacks. That is a no-no. And so a lot of nurses and nurse practitioners, even doctors, aren't aware of this. And so it's easy to fall prey to some of these predatory practices by, again, non-medical people to ask you to do things for the almighty dollar. So be very careful of those. Okay, so I'm going to issue a trigger warning for this particular story because it does involve a serious injury to a nurse. And so I wanted to make everyone aware that some of the details may be graphic. So this is from Boston 25 News, and it says a nurse who suffered a serious brain injury after being attacked by a patient on the job celebrated a victory in court Tuesday as her attacker was found guilty of assault charges and received a 2-year suspended sentence. John Paul Duran, a 65-year-old homeless psychiatric patient at Lowell General Hospital Saints campus at the time of the 2021 attack, was found guilty of 2 assault charges for beating then emergency room nurse Grace Rapinkow in the head with a fire extinguisher. Duran, who was found not guilty of several other charges for lack of criminal responsibility, has also served time at Bridgewater State Hospital. Terms of his probation require him to continue his mental health treatment and to stay away from Rapinkow. A violation could result in jail time. Hospital security video shows Duran attacked Rapinkow from behind while she was seated at her computer station, smashing her over the head twice before chasing another nurse with the weapon. Rapinkow, who was treated in the ICU for a skull fracture and brain bleed, waited 3.5 years for justice. She called the judge's verdict closure. It's a little bit bittersweet. It's something I have to live through every day, and having to come face to face with someone that hurt me. It was hard and a little bit heartbreaking, but at the end of the day, we got kind of the verdict we were all hoping and praying for. Rapinkow, who delivered an emotional victim impact statement, has physically recovered, but is still mentally healing, experiencing depression and anxiety, often reliving the trauma. Every day I deal with it, some way or another. I am reminded of it or I have flashbacks of it. Prior to Tuesday's bench trial, Rapinkow had feared Duran's charges would be dropped after he was initially found incompetent to stand trial. I dealt with mental illness and psychiatric patients for a very long time in the emergency room. I understand it. I understand we should give him some grace in the matter of the fact. However, what he did, you should still be held accountable for. While she was conflicted about Duran receiving probation instead of jail time, Rapinkow believes the guilty verdict sends a message that the daily violence against healthcare workers is unacceptable. We didn't sign up to get assaulted. I really do hope that this sets an example for people that you can't do these things to healthcare workers. You can't just do that and expect nothing to come out of it because your actions have to be held accountable. After the attack, Rapinkow could not endure working in the ER again, but ever committed to helping people. She continues to work as a nurse in Boston. So I'm glad that she got some sort of closure with this, and I wish her well in her story. But I wanted to share this story because we have another story that I wanted to share with you. This is coming up from a bill in Washington State Legislature. A new bill is making its way through the Washington State Legislature, igniting debate among healthcare workers particularly nurses and doctors who are concerned it could endanger their safety. House Bill 1220, introduced by several Democratic representatives, seeks to adjust the legal framework around surrounding assaults on healthcare providers. The bill will exempt certain behavioral health situations from assault in the third-degree charges, which are currently a felony when a healthcare provider is attacked. And I am just going to say publicly, I am against this bill. I don't live in Washington State, but if you are a nurse in Washington State, I am encouraging you to contact your representative and ask them to vote no. All right, let's get back into it. So instead, the attacker would only be charged with a misdemeanor or gross misdemeanor, which carries a much lighter sentence if the individual is being detained or awaiting evaluation for behavioral health treatment, is in custody due to criminal insanity, or is voluntarily seeking inpatient treatment for a behavioral health condition. I wholeheartedly disagree with this, and I am going to tell you why. There are patients who are coming to be evaluated and treated for a psychiatric condition, and they are fully aware of their actions and what they are doing. And I have actually had patients say, well, you can't do anything to me because I'm not using this term lightly, crazy, and therefore nothing can happen to me. And I've had patients state that. They are fully aware of what their actions are. Now, I'm not saying that all of them are, and there are some that are in active psychosis and they're having issues, but a lot of them have other disorders that don't render them incapable of understanding the consequences of what they're doing. And so just the mere suggestion that, oh, I'm here because I'm seeking mental health treatment, therefore I'm immune to any prosecution, doesn't sit well with me. So I'm going to ask you, what do you think about it? Comment and let me know. Okay. So it says the bill's intent is to recognize that individuals in the midst of a mental health crisis may not have full control over their actions and should not face the same legal consequences as someone assaulting a healthcare worker with criminal intent. However, what happens if that person then unalives the healthcare worker? Do they get away with it? Let's think about that. Or another person. So again, it's a slippery slope, and I just have trouble with this. So I want to hear more about it. So Representative Dara Favier, a Democrat from Seattle, the bill's main sponsor, emphasized this point during a legislative hearing on Monday. We are not removing protections for workers because at the end of the day, folks can still call for help. Law enforcement can still respond. And do what? Because a lot of times then you get from your administration, oh, what could you have done better to prevent this? Yeah, no, I don't know. This is by a person who probably has no healthcare experience whatsoever. So anyway, I'm going to go back to what she said. We are not removing protections for workers because at the end of the day, folks can still call for help. Law enforcement can still respond, arrest, and book the individual, and prosecutors can still charge the individual. We're just making a change in what the charge is at the end of the day. And I'm saying that if that person in the midst of their mental health crisis hits that police officer, they're going to be charged. They're going to get a felony automatic. So what makes the life of that police officer better than the life of the nurse or the doctor that's treating him? Okay. So why healthcare workers are concerned? Here goes. For healthcare professionals, the concern with HB 1220 lies in the potential to create a loophole that could allow individuals in behavioral health crises to assault them without facing the same legal repercussions as others. Anyone not considered to be a behavioral health crisis could face years of prison time for a violent assault against a nurse or doctor. Justin Gill, representing the Washington State Nurses Association, expressed concerns that the bill does not directly address the systemic issues causing violence in the healthcare setting. We don't feel that the bill addresses the issue within the criminal justice system where the problem actually lies. He's added, Washington State has seen a 41% increase over the prior year in reporting of violence, workplace violence against patients and healthcare staff. According to the American Nurses Association, nearly 1 in 4 nurses report experiencing physical violence in the job. One of those nurses. A felony criminal prosecution does not provide the person suffering from mental illness access to needed treatment. According to Katie Harrell, special counsel for criminal practice and policy with King County Department of Public Defense. She stressed the criminal justice system is not equipped to provide the necessary mental health care, and that HB 1220 could help address this gap by avoiding felony charges. What we're trying to do with this bill is to really take a scalpel to assault-free laws and take a narrow look at folks who we already know are not doing well. Healthcare professionals fear the bill's exemption could signal to some individuals that there are no significant legal consequences for attacking healthcare workers during a crisis. Dr. Ryan Kie, an emergency physician in Snohomish County, Washington, spoke in opposition on behalf of the Washington chapter of the American College of Emergency Physicians. This bill asserts that the patients experiencing a behavioral health crisis are unable to consider the consequences of their actions. This is an assumption, and it is not true of all patients, which is what I just said. So I think that this blanket, no. Maybe if there's some mitigating circumstances, you can plea it down, but I don't think that it should start there and be codified that way. I just don't. And so nurses, I'm going to say, if you have not chimed in on this, you need to, because as I just read in the previous story, this nurse, this emergency room nurse, is now living with the effects of her injuries for the rest of her life. And she can't return back to the job that she previously had because of those injuries, because of a patient assaulting her. So this is why I share this information. All right, let's get into one more story and then we'll take a quick break. This is coming out of Pennsylvania from WNEP.com, and it says, Governor Shapiro proposes policy to help nurse practitioners across Pennsylvania. At the 2025 budget proposal, Governor Josh Shapiro announced a policy that would greatly benefit nurse practitioners, giving full practice authority to highly educated, highly qualified nurse practitioners who work under a licensed physician for at least 3 years. It's a policy that has been debated for years, but Shapiro said it could help rural areas access much needed health care. In rural counties, there is one primary care physician for every 522 patients. A few hours after the budget proposal, the Pennsylvania Medical Society released a statement. They said that they were disappointed in the governor's recent position and that patient safety is compromised when a nurse practitioner's practice without physician supervision. However, one nurse practitioner in Lackawanna County said that there's really no need for supervision. She said, I practice in primary care. I pretty much do everything that a family practice physician can do, but I'm a family practice nurse practitioner. There's not much difference. In fact, she says there is little supervision in primary care. Nurse practitioners are registered nurses with advanced education and clinical training. There are no requirements for the physician to see my patients, practice in the same spot I practice, and sign my charts, co-sign my prescriptions. The physician has no physical job other than to put his name on a piece of paper and say, yes, if I have a question, I can ask him. And that's true. And that's what I've said time and time again. And that's part of the issue, is that you have physicians in different specialties that are part of the AMA, and they're saying all this stop the scope creep, as if nurse practitioners are going in and we're now going to perform major surgery. And that is not the case, and that is not true. And so I think that what needs to happen is there needs to be an understanding and undoing some of this hierarchy in healthcare that actually prevents good access to care. But I go on. 27 states already allow nurse practitioners to practice without having to have a physician to supervise them. I used to practice in Port Jervis, New York, which is right over the border from Pennsylvania. I crossed the border in New York. I don't need a physician to collaborate with me. I walk back over the border in Pennsylvania. All of a sudden, I need a collaborative agreement with the physician. And that's part of the issue. And so, again, and I'm not advocating for this, but it would make more sense if the argument was the physician needs to see all the patients, at least have a contact. These physicians don't even know who these patients are. All they're doing is looking at a medical record and signing a name and collecting a check. That's it. And maybe answering a question or two. And I'm thinking, to me, if I was a physician and I'm going to put my liability out there, and I'm not actually seeing and treating the patient, why would I want to do that? But it's become a money making model for the physicians because they don't do this for free. So they're charging nurse practitioners sometimes thousands of dollars every month just to come in, sign 5% of their charts or whatever your state practice act says, and never actually see a patient. And you're going to tell me that's what keeps the patient safe. Okay, let's take a break and we'll get back into more stories right after this. Nurses, are you ready for more? My mission is for you to own your seat at the table of nurse entrepreneurship, gaining confidence, skills, and the freedom to live your life on your own terms. Assisting you in achieving your goals through tailored advice, continuous learning, and a collaborative approach is at the heart of everything I do. Stop being eaten alive. Come feel the sun. Be a nurse shark. All right. Hey, Neva, great to see you here. Neva's a great nurse colleague and love to see her. She's doing some great things here in Indiana. So check her out as well. And Neva, if you got anything that's coming up, let me know. And I'll put a shout out on it on the show. All right. Here's our next story. This is coming from the Indiana Daily Student. I just happened to see this. I thought this was kind of interesting to talk about this bill. So, Indiana faces critical nursing shortage. Here's how one bill tries to address that. To meet Indiana's future nursing demand, it is estimated that the state will need an additional 5,000 nurses by the year of 2031, according to the Indiana Hospital Association. To reach that number, about an additional 1,300 nurses will need to graduate each year up until 2030. A state Senate bill aims to loosen requirements to enter the field as a start to fix the cyclical issue. Senator Shelley Yoder's Senate Bill 176 would allow high school students to begin training for and earning credits toward becoming licensed practical nurses before graduation. Indiana Senate's Health and Provider Services Committee passed the bill unanimously last month, and it will now move to the Indiana House of Representatives for further consideration and approval. The state currently requires students to graduate high school before earning credits toward a nursing license. As an obstacle, Senate Bill 176 would remove. Individuals would still be required to provide proof of their high school degree or equivalent when applying for a practical nursing license. However, Senate Bill 176 would make it possible for prospective students to begin their path toward licensure early and in turn enter the workforce sooner. Currently, Indiana has less than 10 nurses per every 1,000 people. Though the number of nurses in Indiana has increased in recent years, it is not enough to account for the growing and aging population of Hoosiers. According to the American Association of Colleges of Nursing, enrollment in nursing's bachelor's degree programs declined 1.4% from 2021 to 2022, a small but relevant decrease. Yoder, who represents much of Monroe County, said the concept for the bill came about as she visited long-term care nursing facilities in Monroe County. An administrator told her about the current language written in law that doesn't allow students to move toward acquiring a practical nursing license until they're 18 and have a high school diploma or equivalent. Under the proposed bill, Yoder said, students could take all but one class toward licensure before graduation. As soon as the summer after graduation, prospective nurses will be able to take a final 8-week capstone course to finalize their license, allowing them to enter the workforce soon after graduating. As someone who worked full-time through college, I really appreciated that, Yoder said. I really appreciate this opportunity for both students, but also for addressing the nursing shortage in Indiana, so it is a win-win. She noted that the overwhelming and unanimous support for this bill shows its importance, especially among licensed practical nurses and registered nurses. Not one person was against this bill, whether it was young people who wanted to work towards an LPN or an RN license, or healthcare providers, or state-approved programs. Gregory Carter, associate professor and assistant dean of research at the IU School of Nursing, began his first job in healthcare in 1993. In that time, he witnessed firsthand major changes within the healthcare system. He said the nursing shortage issue is cyclical. This isn't something that's new. We're just experiencing it, I feel, in a more intense way than we did before. The issue on the education side, Carter said, is not the number of students looking to become nurses or that schools are not admitting them, but the limits on how many students can be in the clinical space at a time. He added that there is a nursing faculty shortage working hand in hand with limited clinic size to worsen the nursing shortage. And that's, again, the problem, because I can tell you from past experience, how are you going to get the hospitals to open up clinical spaces for these nursing students? That's going to be difficult, because as a person who tried to get a licensed practical nursing program here in the state of Indiana, every hospital at that time denied us a contract. We had everything ready to go. We had the curriculum ready. We had the insurance. We had the students who were interested. We had a way for them to help get their payment for their classes. We had everything. But yet we were denied, and we're not unable to go forward because not one hospital system in the entire state would give us a contract to bring our students in, because they were full. So without addressing that problem, how are you going to get these programs together? When you have schools, these universities who have a monopoly, and Ivy Tech who have monopoly on clinical space, you're either going to have to change the rules to where they don't have to practice in hospitals, because a lot of times LPNs aren't working in hospitals anyway, and allow them to get their clinical training in nursing homes and maybe rehab hospitals. But acute care hospitals, I want to know how you're going to get that done. So if you have an answer to that, let me know. Put it in the comments, because this is a problem. Okay. So it says, so let's go on. Estimates show that 1 in 4 Hoosiers will be retirement age or beyond in 2030, making the population older than in the past. Older people tend to have increased health issues and require more complicated treatment, and Indiana does not have enough nurses to supplement this rising demand. Carter added that due to the aging population, the need for extended care staff is growing. He said the aging population includes nurses who are soon to retire and will be leaving the workforce, furthering the shortage. Mary Drewis is the vice president and associate chief nurse executive for System Nursing Operations IU Health. She said she saw the workforce shortage peak during the COVID-19 pandemic, specifically when it spread lessened in 2021 and more nurses took on traveling positions. She said that there had been forewarnings of an impending nurse shortage even before the pandemic, noting that the aging workforce, high burnout rates, and the competitive job market. So the effects of the shortage hurt current working nurses. Carter said burnout is at the top of the list of issues nurses are facing. He added burnout, driven by nurses having to work more and more to alleviate the effects of the shortage, causes some nurses to reduce their hours or quit, worsening the issue. Similarly, Drewis said the well-being of all healthcare workers has surfaced as a priority with IU Health. Carter said Senate Bill 176 could help the issue. He noted that the vocational programs for high school students could also help with nurse retention by providing real-world experience and letting them know what they're getting into before they officially enter the workforce. Drewis also mentioned the importance of ongoing scholarship and nursing expansion programs for student nursing implemented specifically by Ivy Tech and the IU School of Nursing that help with enrollment and retention of nursing students. Carter said hospitals provided childcare for nurses when he began working in 1993, but that has become less common since then. In Indiana, there is currently a shortage of affordable childcare. And I remember at community hospital years ago, if you had a sick kid, you could actually take your kid up to the pediatric unit and they would care for your child. You'd pay a fee, but they would care for your child and you could go to work. Well, when all the pediatric units close, where do you take your kids now? So that's an issue. So we'll see what happens with this bill. I'll keep you abreast of it, but I just have some concerns there because I know there's real challenges with finding clinical spaces. And that's just one thing, not let alone faculty to teach these courses, because in academia, they have not kept up some of the salaries. So you make more as a nurse working the floor in the clinical area than you ever would in academia. And I don't know about you, those student loans are expensive. So, there are things that we would have to do. So this is maybe one step, but there's a lot of questions that I have about how you're going to implement this program. All right, let's get on to our next story. This comes from nurse.org, and I found this interesting because I never thought about this. So let me know what you think. It says lawmakers want to ban AI from using the title nurse. Only humans are nurses. And you know what? I'm going to say this in an era where, and I'm not, this is not pick on Physicians Day, but where physicians are wanting to claim exclusive rights to the title doctor. Now, as a nurse, we got to worry about bots taking our title, our hard-earned title. I don't think so, because that AI did not go to nursing school, as far as I'm aware. Anyway, so let's go on. Oregon lawmakers are addressing concerns about artificial intelligence in healthcare with House Bill 2748, which aims to ensure that only humans can be called nurses. The bill, introduced by State Representative Travis Nelson, a nurse and Portland Democrat, would prohibit any non-human entity, including AI, from using the title of nurse. The introduction of House Bill 2748 comes in response to recent technological advancements that have raised questions about the future of AI in nursing. A tech company's announcement of a $9 an hour AI program capable of performing tasks typically associated with nurses has intensified the debate surrounding the potential replacement of human healthcare workers by artificial intelligence. This development has prompted lawmakers to consider the implications of such technology on patient care and the nursing profession as a whole. The key points of House Bill 2748: it is a narrowly focused one-page bill. The bill would ban any non-human entity from using the title nurse or similar titles. It aims to protect patient safety and maintain public trust in healthcare. Jennifer Minzik Kennedy, president of the American Nurses Association, supports the bill, emphasizing its importance for public safety and the need for clarity regarding the qualifications associated with the title nurse. At its core, House Bill 2748 seeks to safeguard the essential human aspects of nursing that cannot be replicated by artificial intelligence. The legislation emphasizes the importance of empathy, critical thinking, and nuanced decision-making skills that human nurses bring to patient care. By specifying that only humans can be nurses, the bill aims to preserve the interpersonal relationships and emotional support that are fundamental to the nursing profession. While House Bill 2748 is narrow in its scope, it represents one of Oregon's first attempts to regulate the use of artificial intelligence in healthcare. This legislative action reflects growing awareness of the need to establish guidelines and boundaries for AI implementation in medical settings. As AI technology continues to advance, similar initiatives may emerge in other states, potentially shaping the future landscape of healthcare regulation across the country. So we'll continue to take a look at this. If you want to hear more about that, go to nurse.org and read the entire article. I find that fascinating because I had no idea that this was coming, but yet, and I didn't pull this article because I tried to stay as apolitical as I possibly can on this show. But you have some people who have been tapped to run agencies who believe that AI can replace nurses. And that is not true. Do you want a robot at your bedside with your dying mom? Think about that. All right, let's get on to the next story. This is again one of those cautionary tales that I like to share because I want people to know, don't do this, but we'll see what's going on. So it says, nursing home administrator held accountable for what happened inside Raleigh Court Health and Rehab. This is from Roanoke, Virginia. Police investigated multiple reports of possible neglect at a Roanoke, I can never say that, nursing home, but charges were never filed. That left local families frustrated that no one was being held accountable for what happened to their loved ones until now. 10 News did many stories on Raleigh Court Health and Rehabilitation Center and concerns families had during COVID-19. Families said their loved ones were neglected and died because of the lack of care they were getting. Now, the administrator of the nursing home during that time is being held accountable. A state board heard what happened and suspended his license. A warning: some may find the details that this story is disturbing. So, again, another trigger warning for you. After years of waiting, families finally had a chance to see some justice after saying their loved ones weren't taken care of properly at Raleigh Court Health and Rehab. Chance Kraft was a nursing home administrator at the time. He had to go before the Virginia Board of Long-Term Care Administrators in December 2024, where his license was just suspended for at least 2 years. During a 10-year hearing, the board 10-hour hearing, the board heard about 3 specific patients and what happened while he managed their nursing home. 86-year-old Lillian Gregory fell at home in October 2020, broke her femur, and never recovered. Jim Gregory, her son, says, "I miss calling her every morning. It hurts." He was at the hearing, and his brother Bill Gregory testified by phone. Their mother was taken to Raleigh Court to the ER after Jim saw her in person. The two doctors called in the forensic nurse to review my mother's condition, and she said it was one of the worst cases she had ever seen as well. A forensic nurse at the emergency room who examined Gregory testified at the hearing that she had extensive wounds, was severely dehydrated, and showed physical signs of neglect and injury. Her tongue was black. Her teeth were missing. The teeth that were there were black. Her toes were orange. The bedding was soiled, still wet. At the time, Renwick City Adult Protective Services investigated and sent this letter stating, "This is a preponderance of evidence that Lillian Gregory was a victim of abuse, neglect, or exploitation." Lillian Gregory died 2 months after she was first admitted to Raleigh Court. The board also heard about resident B, a 97-year-old woman who was brought to the hospital with a large amount of dry fecal matter in her diaper and on her body, but had a clean diaper. The warrant says she was raw and red due to large amounts of fecal matter. And a third woman who, according to documents, told a nurse at Raleigh Court in December 2020 that she was SA'd by an employee, but the facility did not complete a report, nor did anyone contact the appropriate agencies or the woman's family, according to the findings of fact set forth in the case of December 12th of 2024. After hours of testimony and witnesses, the board found Kraft failed to provide or obtain the necessary services required to maintain good grooming, personal or oral hygiene, and proper foot care for Lillian Gregory. The Virginia Board of Long-Term Care Administrators also said the evidence showed a systemic failure of nursing and physician services at Raleigh Court. Mr. Kraft failed to demonstrate that he understood his responsibilities when providing oversight of the facility. His license is now suspended, but for the families, it's not enough. It is a legal system. It is not a justice system because there's no justice in it. Not to me or my brothers, and certainly not to the other families of these people that they abused. You know, my mother lived 86 years, and the last 3 months of her life were hell on earth. That's a terrible thing, you know. A terrible way to go. We would have never done that had we known anything about it. We would have taken her out of there immediately. I was very pleased to hear that the state of Virginia did fault Raleigh Court Health and Rehab, said Julie Parsons. Julie Parsons spent her last day with her 96-year-old grandmother, Helen Norfleet, back in November 2020. Norfleet wasn't one of the women talked about during the hearing, but as a 10 News reported, she went through a decline while living in the facility, with documented bruises, bed sores, and getting an infection on her toes, requiring amputation before dying in the hospital. "We entrusted my nanny with these qualified individuals to take care of her," said Parsons. "If I had the chance to talk to Mr. Kraft, I would say, shame on you. Shame on you for allowing these innocent, vulnerable individuals to be treated with such disrespect." Parsons says the suspension of his license isn't enough. "It does give me a little bit of peace of mind to know that his license has been suspended for 2 years, but I don't feel that it's fair. You continue to be able to keep your license, but my nanny wasn't able to keep her life. To some degree, I'm relieved to have some peace that there is finally some light being shed on the situation 4 years later. But honestly, I don't think that Mr. Kraft should ever have his license back. He caused a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, not only to the patients, but to all of the families. That's something I'll live with to the day I die, and my brothers as well. We feel like we failed our mother," said Bill Gregory. The Attorney General of Virginia's office sent a statement saying the Office of the Attorney General of Virginia considers the health and safety and well-being of all the citizens of the Commonwealth of Virginia a paramount responsibility. Residents of licensed long-term care facilities are some of the Commonwealth's most vulnerable citizens, and the Office of the Attorney General and the Virginia Board of Long-Term Care Administration are dedicated to ensure that those citizens are protected. We are very pleased with the outcome of this matter, and this office will continue to ensure the Commonwealth's most vulnerable populations are protected by taking appropriate measures when licensed long-term care facilities fail to ensure the proper care for their residents. They reached out to Kraft's attorney, but have yet to hear back at the time of this story. So again, those are some questions, and I'm saying this to say they put the fault on the administrator, but where's the fault on corporate? I'm just saying. There has to be some responsibility for these corporations that own these facilities and don't provide the resources that facilities need and don't back up their administrators, the director of nurses. I have really big concerns about that. And so I think there's more to this story. And I think we need to look at what's happening at a systems level and take a step back, because I can tell you from being in the trenches, a lot of times these administrators, their bonuses are tied to certain outcomes and things like that. And their hands are tied because corporate is dictating to them what to do. And then when stuff, goes sideways, then they take a step back. Oh, no, it's not our fault. And then they sweep it under the rug and let the administrator and the director of nursing take all the blame. And so my question is, when are we going to hold these nursing home operators accountable for what they're doing? And again, I'm not railing against nursing homes. I'm not railing against nursing homes at all. Because there are some great facilities out there, and I've worked in some of them. And I know that there are people who are doing their very best, and I was a CNA in the trenches. So I know what it takes to do those things. But I'm saying that at a larger level, we need to look at who's holding the bag. And so that's my concern, is that the individual nurse or administrator is putting their license and livelihood and their reputation on the line. Are they being backed up? And the same thing I say about hospitals as well. Nurses, are you putting yourself out there thinking that they're going to support you? And as Redonda Vault's case shows, they're not going to support you. They will throw you under the rug. And that's why you have to protect yourself. So this is why I have these stories. Again, it's not to say, long-term care is bad. No, because we really need good long-term care facilities. And I've worked in some great ones with some administrators that care and do the best that they can for individuals and go above and beyond. I've seen it. But we also have bad actors out here, and I'm not gonna shy away from calling them out. All right. Let's move to our next story. And we got two more stories, and then two more stories after that, because I do want to get to this nursing making a difference story, and then we'll get to some of our announcements. Okay. All right. So VA nurses are in short supply. Unions say Trump's deferred resignation plan can make things worse. It says for the federal government's largest group of employees, nurses caring for military veterans through the Department of Veteran Affairs, which I didn't know that. I didn't know that nurses were the largest group of federal employees. That blows my mind. It makes sense, but I never would have thought of it that way. The Trump administration's deferred resignation offer and its looming Thursday deadline come amid longstanding staffing shortages deemed severe at more than half of all facilities. Unions are discouraging nurses from accepting the offer, and leaders say an exodus would directly and immediately affect the care of its 9.1 million enrolled veterans. We're already facing a staffing crisis in our hospital, said Irma Westmoreland, a registered nurse who heads the Veteran Affairs Unit for National Nurses United. We cannot afford to lose any more staff. Nurses for the VA, the federal government's largest employer, comprise the biggest single group of federal workers, numbering more than 100,000 and according for 5% of all full-time permanent employees, according to an Associated Press analysis of personnel data. Union official Mary Jean Burke says she's taking calls from nurses and other VA workers from across the country. At first, she said some thought the buyout plan sounded attractive, but second thoughts have set in. Originally, I think people were like, I'm out of here, said Burke, a physical therapist and American Federation of Government Employees leader. As more information came out from the U.S. Office of Personal Management, it started sounding like a little bit too good to be true, and people were hesitant. VA nurses are somewhat older than the rest of the workforce, with 16.2% of nurses 55 or older compared to 14.6% for the rest of the federal workforce. Burke said some workers who are retirement eligible have been, quote, on the fence about the offer, which promises pay through September 30th, though there have been some broad concerns about the program's legality. And some concerns about they actually will, keep the promise, because so far they haven't kept many promises. Nurses were confused at first, but now they're angry, Westmoreland said. Official communication on the offer has implied that nurses are not productive, she said, and that's insulted those she's talked to. A follow-up question and answer email from the Office of Personnel Management encouraged federal employees to find a job in the private sector. Woo! The way to greater American prosperity is encouraging people to move from lower productivity jobs in the public sector to higher productivity jobs in the private sector, the email said. Wow. That's from Yahoo News, by the way. And wow. Okay. Here's another story. Who cares for the caregiver? The push for laws to protect nurses' mental health. This is from Medscape. It says the alarm blares at 5 a.m. and before the coffee kicks in, you step into the hospital floor, chaos in full swing, you're short-staffed again, and with twice as many patients as possible. A patient in room 406 is crashing, alarm bells shriek, and it's another patient shouting for meds across the hall. Family members need updates. The doctor has multiple orders for you, and 2 admits in the hallway. More than 67% of nurses reported feeling depressed or anxious, and 2/3 say they were not receiving mental health support. Nurses cite lack of time and financial resources among the reasons for not seeking treatment, but fears about losing their jobs and the impact on their nursing license were also top issues. Registered nurses and advanced practice nurses can be required to answer invasive questions about their mental health as part of their state licensure and advanced credentialing applications. The questions can be stigmatizing and could require nurses to submit letters from their healthcare providers addressing their mental health status. Nurses aren't seeking help because they are fearful about losing their licensure, said Bernadette Mezerick Melnick, advanced practitioner nurse, PhD, certified nurse practitioner, study author, and professor emeritus at the Ohio State University, Columbus, Ohio. We need to be putting real emphasis on getting help for the nurses who need help. Staffing shortages, high patient loads, poor leadership, and increased workplace violence have contributed to high rates of burnout in the nursing workforce. Nurses also deal with high rates of compassion fatigue, poor work-life balance, and the higher than average suicide rates. Nursing licensure boards and 30 states ask questions about mental illness on their applications, including 22 boards that ask about past mental health diagnosis and require predictions of future impairment. Wow, that's not invasive. The workforce in healthcare has got the worst mental health, but they're also uniquely penalized by the system, said Corey Feist, attorney, MBA, co-founder and CEO of Dr. Lorna Breen Heroes Foundation. They are very specific actions that licensing boards and others need to take to make explicit that the workforce is valued, seen, heard, and cared about. So there's more to this, but I'm going to encourage you to read that because in interest of time, I'm not going to read all of it. But head on over to Medscape to read the rest of this article, and let's bring about that conversation and dialogue about it because, that seems a little invasive. Okay. All right, let's get to our last story of the day. I wanted to share this. And my heart goes out to all of those that were affected by the fires in California. This happens to be an article from Presswire that talks about a nurse that's gotten support from her community. And I think this is great. So it says home and business of nurse Pamela Jane Nye, destroyed by Palisades wildfire, gets surprise peer and public support. The devastating Palisades wildfire that swept through California earlier this year not only destroyed homes and their content, but for acclaimed nurse Pamela Jane Nye prevented her Operation Scrubs Incorporated nonprofit from providing tuition-free continuing nursing education scholarships for working nurses, and global nurse advocacy. Limited to her savings and retirement income, problematic for Nye is replacing her home and content, business equipment, and obtaining revenue needed for her Operation Scrubs Inc. nonprofit to continue. Unbeknown to Nye, a peer nurse established a GoFundMe account, which, after her online posting, the account immediately began to generate donations from nurses and nurse appreciative public. The posting stated, "I'm one of the countless nurses whose lives have been profoundly touched by Pam Nye's wisdom, kindness, and unwavering dedication to others." The message also urged a global peer nurse population and a nurse supportive public to rally behind Nye in this time of need. Nye's determination and resilience have not gone unnoticed, as she was recently interviewed by PBS NewsHour anchor William Brangham. One of the questions Brangham asked was, how do you determine what needs to be done next, and how do you plan on that happening? In addition to faith, you adapt, you improvise, you overcome, Nye responded. And acknowledging her adapt, improvise, overcome problem-solving plan mirrors the line from Clint Eastwood in his hit film Heartbreak Ridge. Nye's story is expected to touch the hearts of many and inspire others to not give up in the face of adversity, and as a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there's always hope and support from those around us. So, again, I want to thank the nursing community for rallying behind her. I love it to see when we come together and support. And so, congratulations to Nurse Nye and all those who supported her as nurses making a difference. Okay, so that ends our stories for today. Let's get into some quick announcements as we are over our time. But I do want to share that we have this information. Okay, so coming up this Saturday, very excited, this Saturday, we have our nurse event that's coming up at the Nurse Shark Academy. So head on over to the nursesharkacademy.biz and you can sign up for our event that's coming up this Saturday, which is our Break Free, the Nurse's Path to Entrepreneurship. You can sign up at the nursesharkacademy.biz. Our webinar will be on the event. I'm excited for that. So we have that coming up. And then also we'll have some additional things that are happening the end of this month and early next month. So please keep an eye on that. Also for Baxter Professional Services Health Education.com, I just want to share with you that we do have our TB instructor class coming up that I want everybody to get a chance to attend if you can, if you meet the criteria, if you've been a basic TB validated individual that has for the past 6 months, and so it's current for the 6 months, and you have a license, you're a licensed health professional, please join us for that class that will be coming up this month as well. So there's still time to get into that class. We also have our CPR classes available. Our stress reduction wellness is happening. So we have these sessions that are coming up. So you can join us for any of those options as well. So I'll be posting some more information about that. I want to thank you for tuning in and watching. Those of you that are on our YouTube channel, don't forget to like and subscribe. And don't forget to watch our other show, the Nurse Shark Academy show, where we interview nurse business owners and leaders. And I guarantee you, we had a great show that just posted this Monday. It was awesome. I love talking to this nurse. Go listen to that episode on the nursesharkacademy.biz or on our YouTube channel, the Nurse Shark Academy YouTube channel. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Have a great rest of your week.